Hello guys, I am Vitold and this is my long time promised all mid-size adventure motorcycles comparison. Previously I've done an all large adventure motorcycles comparison video which you liked. So now it's time for the second segment that's also super popular amongst riders around the world. You guys likely included. Now in this video you'll learn how well each bike scores out of the bunch in a given category. The contenders are in alphabetical order: Aprilia Touareg 660, BMW F900 GS, Ducati Desert X, Ducati Multistrada V2S, Honda XL750 Transalp, KTM 890 Adventure, KTM 890 Adventure R, Suzuki V-Strom 800DE, Triumph Tiger GT Pro, and Yamaha Tenere 700. I have ridden them all, some even as pre-facelifted versions and now updated for 2025 and on. These are the Ducati Multistrada V2S, that's new for 2025 and on, Triumph Tiger 900 GT Pro, and Yamaha Tenere 700. Also new is Honda Transalp, but the changes are so insignificant that I didn't bother retesting this bike. Actually, Triumph Tiger 900 GTP also feels super similar to me, but whatever. So I have ridden all large and all middleweight adventure motorcycles strictly for you guys. Now all these bikes that are available on my market at the time of making this video, some of them I have already compared in individual separate head-to-head comparisons here on YouTube, some I will, but I feel that it is important to highlight that since I've got experience focused on testing and reviewing these bikes for you, I do know pretty well what's possible in this segment, and not only in this segment. Now, this lets me assess these motorcycles, I suppose, pretty well, thanks to that, and I hope that you will find it useful, guys. I do not own any of these motorcycles. None of them was given to me for any special long-term testing for free. I arranged all the testing myself, and it costed me as much as it would cost you guys if you were up to some task like this. I think this is important. I also believe I need to tell you clearly that this is and will always be up to some point subjective, largely subjective actually, and you should know something about my motorcycle preferences so that you have an idea of what kind of rider I am and decide, or rather be aware, how close to that you yourselves are. But anyhow, I will explain how I judge the bikes in all the categories of this comparison so that it's as clear to you guys as possible. Now, what I value a lot myself is how explosive the motorcycle is. I like them quick and flexible in terms of engines. I very much enjoy good and easy handling. I do like, obviously, well, to me it's obvious, but comfortable seats, seats that are not too hard. I like nice and deep sound. I do not care much about off-roading, but I will give you some useful information on that. I cannot assess reliability, and I do not care that much about it in motorcycles, as this is a super emotional subject, and I just prefer to have fun and fix it rather than have a boring motorcycle that will likely break anyway at some point, but I'll have faith in that it won't. To some it is important. How to judge it, I'll also have a few words about that in the end. Still, obviously, well, no one likes to feel insecure, but fun and emotions during riding are more important to me myself, so I do focus on that. Alright, so now how this video is structured. There are 15 separate categories that I have scored the bikes in, and I gave them a score from 1 to 10 and placed them in a specific position in a rank between these 10 motorcycles. So you will be having all that on the screen. The categories are: number 1, engine and performance, then suspension, then low speed handling, high speed handling, seat and position comfort, wind protection, brakes, fuel tank capacity, my very subjective feeling of weight of a given bike, technology on board, my very subjective again perspective on sound and on design, then ground clearance data, then price and value for money, and the overall X factor. There are winners in the given categories, and I will also give you a rank showing which bike is placed how high in the overall rank in the end, having all the categories combined in 2 ways. Now, this will not mean that it's the best bike in the world in the segment, but that it scores the highest in a certain number of categories. But you will have to decide which categories are the most important to you, and I suggest you focus on that specifically. I will also present you with a let's call it a bonus, helpful indication within every category for you to understand better which bikes are above average and which are below average. I needed to tell you all that up front so that you know exactly what to expect and how to understand all that I'm going to be showing you right now. I believe transparency is very much needed here, as it's about big decisions involving big money. So let's get into it with the first category, which is engine and performance, where I focus on how quick the bike is, how accessible the power is, and hence how flexible the engine is as well. Also, transmission, vibration, and heat management are taken into consideration, but are not the key. And you may learn all the details on these in my full individual reviews of these motorcycles that are linked in the description of this video, so that you get it all in one place. Now, in the last 10th place, we've got Aprilia TourX 660 with its dual-cylinder inline engine with 80 horsepower and 17 Nm of torque that you will immediately see struggling and failing to deliver anything other than steady acceleration and guilt to yourself for pushing the bike. Not very pleasant in a score of 4 out of 10. I can make scrambled eggs faster than it can reach 100 km per hour. Now, just a bit better is Yamaha Tenere 700 after the update that gets 5 out of 10 points for its also two-cylinder but weaker engine. It also accelerates without much emotion, but at least it doesn't seem to be struggling, but just it's being weak. There is some issue with the new for this model traction control that is annoying when you want to get maximum performance. Suzuki V-Strom 800D also gets 5 out of 10 points, but it rides better than Tenere in my opinion. It also has a larger engine with more power at 84 horsepower and 78 Nm of torque. It's all fine with the way it runs, but it just isn't juicy enough at higher RPM, and it generates crazy amount of vibration through the foot pegs. You expect much from this bike, but you don't get that much in this area. A better, meaning more enjoyable to me, is Ducati Desert X's engine, which is a V2 that I rated at 6 out of 10 points, simply because it's more juicy than V-Strom's, and that's most likely because it's a 937 cubic centimeter engine with 110 horsepower and 92 Nm of torque, so it's significantly more powerful bike. It is quick, with not bad vibration, quite effortless feeling overall. Flexibility over 4000 RPM is bad, and the first time I started the engine it sounded as if it was going to stall for a few minutes, including already being on the road, which was worrying to me, and I definitely did not like that. The throttle itself is also strangely numb, and I do not enjoy how it feels. Also, heat management is an issue, as the bike gets way too hot on a warm day, and the quick shifter isn't the best too. So not the highest score, and the 7th position. Position number 6 goes to Ducati Multistrada V2S, that's new for 2025, with a new and different engine than before, and also different than in the Ducati Desert X. It's now smaller with 890 cubic centimeters of displacement, still being a V2, which is fun, and now having 115 horsepower and 92 Nm of torque. Low range still isn't great, but it's slightly better than it used to, as was really not cool as in the Desert X. But now the top range is more boring than it used to be, so everything got sort of flattened. In my full review of the new Multistrada, I compare its engine's behavior in the top RPM to how a diesel engine behaves up there, so kind of going steadily but without getting quicker and quicker the higher you get in the RPM range. Same happens here. Up to 6000 RPM it's sleeping, then it wakes up around this area, but the higher you go the better it does not get. Quick shifter is terrible in terms of how hard it is to use. Heat management is fine on a cold day, but I suspect that on a warmer day it may get a bit hot, but I cannot confirm that. It is a fast motorcycle within the bunch, but I'm not the biggest fan of this engine, and I'm not sure if it's actually better in this new model. 5th place, also with 6 points, goes to Honda XL750 Transalp and its two-cylinder inline engine with 755 cubic centimeters, 91 horsepower and 75 Nm of torque. So see, it's not like the more powerful or even more explosive, the higher in the rank, even though there's some vibration and a boring top end of RPM. Not the most flexible, but it's obviously smaller. Still, it suits the bike well, and it doesn't annoy and it doesn't disappoint as the engines in the two Ducatis may. It makes it more adequate in my mind, hence the higher position of the Transalp. It also has a very good quick shifter, if I was to pinpoint one big advantage here. Now, also with 6 points comes Triumph Tiger 900 GT and its smooth 3-cylinder inline engine. This is the only very different unit in the whole bunch of 2-cylinder engines, but what does it change? Mostly the sound. It is a transmission that works light, a fine quick shifter, 888 cubic centimeters of displacement, now 108 horsepower, so more than before, 90 newton meters of torque, so quite a lot. This makes the bike accelerate quite smoothly with no heat management issues, in my case at least, no annoying vibrations, but it's also not an exciting engine despite being refreshed not long ago and getting more power right at the top. Actually, that matters. To me, it's the exact same thing that's calm and under control. Nothing crazy except for traction control that gets in the way too often, which I don't like obviously. Low end and mid-range of RPM aren't the most powerful, and that's a pity. There are better engines with more character and joy. And the first one of these on the third place with 8 out of 10 points is the new BMW F900 GS. New as a whole new model with the new name. And boy, what a great engine it is in this bike. In the previous F850 GS it was crap, even less interesting than the Triumph, but now it's a totally, and I mean totally different animal. I say that now it's likely the best thing about this whole bike. It is a 2-cylinder inline engine with 895 cubic centimeters of displacement, 105 horsepower, 93 newton meters of torque, and tons of aggression to be released if you want it, especially in the dynamic riding mode. It also makes it sound better, which only enhances the feeling of power. I really enjoy it. It's got good flexibility at lower speeds, there is a nice transmission with a fantastic quick shifter, heat management is fine, so I definitely recommend BMW F900 GS for its engine now. But there are two bikes that do it even cooler, and it's the two KTMs, so in fact it should be only one engine on the top instead of second and first place. Both are actually with 8 points out of 10, just like the BMW, so very close, but I placed the normal Adventure above the 890 Adventure R, for example, because that first bike generally feels more nimble and accessible to me, and on the R, the stock tires, for example, seem visibly less grippy to me, which may, or it actually does, hit the performance. But focusing on the engine, it's also a 2-cylinder one, which has 889 cubic centimeters of displacement, and like BMW, it also comes with 105 horsepower. There's more torque at 100 newton meters, and I feel that this engine propels the KTMs even more effortlessly and with even more explosiveness than BMW. This is the most enjoyable engine out there that is smooth, with great power delivery throughout the entire range of RPM, good flexibility, and that is simply encouraging you to play with it and to push the bike. I really love it. The transmission is fine and smooth, and so is the quick shifter. The only everyday issue is with crazy bloody heat, and due to this, these engines don't get 9 out of 10 points, as on warmer days, especially in the city or simply during slower rides, freaking cook everything around them, including your legs. Or rather, in the first place, cooking your legs. Very, very bad design in terms of this, and a real deal-breaker candidate. So even though it's the most fun, it may not be as fun for your skin, so consider this and test ride the bike to make sure that you can live with that. There are some workarounds with isolating the exhaust pipes, but it's not how it should be. I can recommend BMW at 100%, but here with KTM, I don't think I can do that at 100% at least. What I'm showing you now with the green are the motorcycles that score above average in this category, and in red, those that are below average. I will sum it up in the end as well, and that's going to be that bonus for you guys. The second category to review is suspension. So also a very important one. Here I pay the most attention to how well the bikes absorb the bumps and potholes. This means small ones, big ones, and generally uneven surfaces. The differences are huge. To me, the more comfortable, the better, and I do prefer a floaty suspension that soaks the road irregularities rather than stiff and sporty one. I also take under consideration how the suspension is adjusted, if it is in the first place, but it's not the most important thing in the end. So the last bike with the lowest score of 5 out of 10 is Aprilia Touareg 660. Again, this is the lowest score because on larger bumps the front suspension constantly feels like it's bottoming out. Rear suspension is squatting during acceleration, which is not cool unless it means that the bike is soft and comfy, which I would like, but it's only fine when riding over smaller bumps. Now hit something more significant and you're in pain. Mind you, we've got 24 centimeters of suspension travel here, so a lot. And the bike doesn't need to be so harsh, but it is. It's not a comfy suspension to me. The next one, also with 5 out of 10 points, is KTM 890 Adventure in the R variant, and only in it, as only this one is stiff as a morning hairstyle. But again, why? With also 24 centimeters of suspension travel and not being floaty here at all, I don't get it. The bike is jumpy overall and you cannot do much about it, despite the suspension being easily adjustable manually in the front and in the rear. Generally not nice. Then on the 8th place, with a higher score of 6 out of 10, there is the new BMW F900 GS. Mind you that this one that you see and I was testing is equipped with Enduro Pack Pro, which lets you do more with the suspension, and BMW refers to it as sports suspension. It's also stiff, but I feel that it's more humanely set than an KTM 890 Adventure R, but I still find it too harsh on roads other than perfect. Yes, the bike feels planted, which is nice, but to me the sacrifice in comfort is too large. By the way, I tested the bike with the mentioned pack, as I expect most people to be choosing it. Here you're getting 23 centimeters of front wheel travel and 21.5 centimeters in the rear. Now, better than BMW suspension seems to me the regular KTM 890 Adventure suspension. It's also on the stiffer side and gets 6 out of 10 points from me, but perhaps due to having smaller travel of 20 centimeters both in the front and in the rear, KTM let it work softer and smoother. It feels nicer than BMW, but it's not a night and day difference. I wish it was more comfortable on KTM, but it hasn't crossed to the side of not nice, while BMW might have for some. Be there. Now, also with 6 out of 10 comes Yamaha Tenere 700 that I mentioned in my full honest review as having competent suspension. It's there and you don't notice it, as it's not too harsh and not too soft and not too floaty. It's a pretty okay combination that just doesn't bother you. It also means that it's not great, so keep that in mind. I feel like I like Transalp's suspension more, despite giving it still the same score of 6 out of 10, so not more. The reason for that is that generally it's more comfortable than other already mentioned motorcycles, and that's great and it's really fine. But once you encounter an enemy in a form of a larger obstacle, larger bump, then the bike becomes nervous and overall the experience is somehow inconsistent, so that it makes you notice that something is not always right. Tenere doesn't have this problem, but it also doesn't get as comfy on better roads. So Transalp has the edge in this area slightly, and hence I position it above the Tenere. Transalp has 20 centimeters of front and 19 centimeters of rear wheel travel. Tenere has 21 in the front and 20 in the rear, so one more everywhere. And now let's shoot to heavens, with the bike scoring 8 out of 10 points and landing on the 4th place, which is Suzuki V-Strom 800DE. Here you're having soft suspension that provides amazing levels of comfort, making it a joy to ride for long on this bike on whatever kind of road. It is really, really good in the V-Strom. There are 22 centimeters of suspension travel in the front, maybe even a bit too soft. Sometimes you wish it wouldn't dive as much as it does. I can recommend it for comfort overall, I do like it. But it's not the only comfortable bike that gets 8 out of 10 points, as right before it is Triumph Tiger 900 GT Pro on the 3rd place. But what does it do better, you ask? It's also comfortable, it's also composed and pretty much matches V-Strom 800D, but what it's got more is electronic adjustment in the rear in the GT Pro version. It is quick, easy and fun, and it changes the way the bike rides, making you actually use this feature. It's definitely a bonus, and Triumph may be considered more competent because of this, while being just as comfortable as the V-Strom. 18 centimeters of the front wheel travel and 17 centimeters of the rear one. I could already say that it doesn't feel like there's any need for the suspension to get any better than the last two bikes mentioned, but there are two more that I consider nicer, and the next one on the 2nd place with a score of 9 out of 10 is the new Ducati Multistrada V2S. And man, this is a beast that can transform from a very comfortable bike similar to V-Strom and Tiger, while with a flick of a switch it can become stiff like BMW or KTM 890 Adventure, and fully not like Triumph just in the rear, but both in the front and rear, with fully electronically adjustable suspension. This is the only bike in the comparison and the segment that can have that. There is a BMW F900GS Adventure, sort of, which is mostly the previous generation, hence I consider it irrelevant until BMW updates it to the level of the regular really new 900GS. That one looks like the old F850GS Adventure. You may also further customize the settings, having a really crazy amount of possibilities with this bike. It is awesome in my mind. But one motorcycle is even more comfortable than it, even though it has conventionally, so fully manually adjustable suspension. It's Ducati Desert X that I also awarded with 9 out of 10 points and the first place in the rank. It can become even more comfy and soak bumps better than the Multistrada, likely because it's got 23 centimeters of front wheel travel and 22 centimeters in the rear versus just 17 centimeters in the Multistrada in the front and in the rear. Now Desert X has much more to work with, and it does great flying over everything as if it was a Mercedes S-Class with its air suspension. Amazing, class leading, while being a bit floaty sometimes, and also composed and under control, so not becoming a boat on two wheels at all times. Very cool, and this is the most comfortable motorcycle in the midsize adventure segment. In green, those above the average, and in red, those not so good as below average for you to see. Now in the category number 3, we've got low speed handling, so everything that happens to the bike when you're setting off, riding between cars, so filtering, mating, making U-turns, mating, and all other low speed maneuvers. To make it more specific, let's say that it's everything up to 50 kilometers per hour or 30 miles per hour, but of course in reality it wouldn't be low speed exactly to all of us. Here I focus on how stable the bike is, meaning if you can ride it perfectly straight and make some small corrections quickly to not move around like a snake and snap some car's mirrors, on how easy it is to turn and not fall immediately, but feel the weight of the bike and be able to control it. Slow and sharp turns and U-turns need to be easy, and the bike should feel as light as possible. Note that it's got not that much to do with the sheer weight, but it's balancing with center of gravity and engineering. So starting off from the worst and 5 out of 10 points here with Ducati Desert X. Now let me tell you that it's not bad. There isn't a motorcycle that handles badly at lower speeds in this segment. Desert X is manageable, but in my opinion it's making you feel a lot insecure, and obviously if you're not confident at low speeds, it is not perfect. I connect the dots here with the previous category of suspension where I stated that Desert X is the most comfortable bike in the segment, and likely being rather soft influences that it's also kind of rubbery at low speeds, and in the end you may lack control over it. Let me already tell you that the situation looks differently in high-speed handling, which will be next, and Desert X scores very differently there. Don't want to justify it, but now comes the next bike in the rank with 6 out of 10 points and being a KTM 890 Adventure R. Here also everything seems to be fine, but it's not as fine as in other motorcycles. It is precise in terms of steering, but at low speeds there is an issue with the handlebar being so low on such a tall bike that it is negatively impacting its movements. Not the best. Then with 7 out of 10 points is the Triumph Tiger 900 GT Pro that does it pretty well, as it's stable and does what you want it to do at low speeds. The only major issue is its front suspension in combination with a nervous front brake that if you use, the front end dives like crazy, which obviously makes you lose control. The issue is the most visible at low speeds, and this may be challenging then. 7th place, also with 7 out of 10 points, goes to BMW F900GS that does still similarly well to the Triumph without the issue with the front brake and diving suspension. But at low speeds, there is the handlebar sort of in the way. What I mean here is that it's pretty hard to move left and right, which obviously makes you fight with it too much and lose balance. Lost balance of the rider is trouble at low speeds, and if the bike is causing that, then it's not perfect. 6th place with 8 out of 10 points, so very good, goes to Yamaha Tenere 700. At low speeds it's really enjoyable and light to play with. It does whatever you want it to with no protests, no issues, and it is pure joy. Quick turns, good balance and control is what every bike should provide. Tenere 700 does it with no downsides here. But its high-speed handling will have a much different score, wait for that. Now let's move to a bike that may be doing it even better, slightly, because also with 8 out of 10 points, but the position before the Tenere is Ducati Multistrada V2S of the current generation. It's very nimble at low speeds, it's very neutral, and also under control no matter what you throw at it. Nothing more to add. I can recommend it overall, and you may slightly influence all that by adjusting the suspension with a flick of a switch and make the suspension stiffer. That still positively impacts handling too a little bit. Very little front suspension dive when braking is a big advantage here. Fourth place, also with 8 out of 10 points, goes to KTM 890 Adventure without the letter R in its name, as it's also precise and light to steer at low speeds. Everything under control and enjoyable here. It feels like it's lower than Multistrada and Tenere, which gives an impression of having it under better control. So this is where it scores over these two higher with, well, still same number of score, but it just does it a little better in my opinion. Also not much front suspension dive, which is awesome, with no drawbacks in the bike. However, I feel that Honda Transalp 750 also deserves 8 out of 10 points. It's one of the best in terms of low speed handling, and it's just so easy, likely as easy as the KTM, but seems to be a bigger and more floaty bike. Great handling is further enhanced by it. So it may not handle actually better than the 890 Adventure and Multistrada V2S, but it seems like it does so, as you don't expect it to. There is some hesitation at crawling speeds of 5 to 10 km per hour, but likely due to soft suspension. Here, the other two bikes are better, mentioned before, but I still feel that Honda does deserve the spot. Moving a step up to a bike that receives 9 out of 10 points, and the second place, that is almost like mind-controlled, starting from the speed of 20 km per hour to 80 km per hour, so largely at lower speeds, that changes directions and starts to lean exactly how you want it the moment you think about doing so. It's Suzuki V-Strom 800e. Man, what a masterpiece this is. It's as compliant in terms of turning as the all-time king, so the big BMW R1250 GS. Yes, the previous generation of the big GS, the best one I believe. You should love the way this bike moves around between those speeds, I mean the V-Strom. At crawling speeds it's not perfect though, because of the front suspension doing its things somewhere outside of your command a bit too much. We also see the effects of that at higher speeds, which, well, I'll mention in a moment in the next category. Bloody V-Strom. And now comes the leader and a magician that surprised me like not many other motorcycles have over the decades. Aprilia Touareg 660 with 10 out of 10 points and the first place in the rank. I wonder what I should say, as 10 out of 10 basically says it all. It does every single thing better than any other bike in the segment. At 30 km per hour you may be scrapping the foot pegs. It's just so good. It's so enjoyable and it's so encouraging to turn that it drives me mad that it's got such an inadequate engine, as otherwise it would be a rocket on wheels. Who would expect? Now, if you're into riding on twisty roads without taking joy in accelerating like crazy, this bike is for you. If you're considering to buy any of these mid-size adventure bikes and think that handling is key for you, test ride the Touareg to know what's possible and if you can live without it. Just ride it for the sheer fun of playing with it on the twisties. It's amazing and simply the best here. Let's see in green the ones that are best and in red those under-delivering in a comparison with the whole group in this category. Alright, so what about the high-speed handling in the next segment now? Here I've got similar criteria just at high speeds of over 50 km per hour. Rather what I mean is around 100 km per hour or 60 miles per hour and up obviously. And instead of U-turns and riding perfectly straight, we've got braking and accelerating in the corners, which makes some bikes dangerously lift and straighten their path. Some are also harder to tighten in a corner, which is also not how it should be, and potentially this might be dangerous. So let's move to the bottom of the table where sits a bike that you likely would not expect to be there after what I told you about within the low speed handling. With 5 out of 10 points, so still not terrible but really low in the comparison, is Suzuki V-Strom 800e. What the hell happened there? You reach 80 km per hour and this asshole just stops turning. You've got to push it. you've got to pull, you've got to squeeze your muscles, you got to slow down to not ride straight through a corner. It's not terrible still, but it's especially surprising as below that speed it is just so good. So you would never tell that it can just reverse and change so dramatically, but it does. It's not playing terrible tricks in terms of straightening up, so not all is lost, but it just doesn't want to cooperate, and you have to fight it really hard to force it to start turning. It is a battle that you don't want to fight on a daily, so if you travel a lot and expect to enjoy a fast ride with high-speed corners, rethink that, or slow down to below 80 km per hour, and then you indeed will enjoy the hell out of the V-Strom 800E. Similar story happens with a bike that acts very similarly, that's also getting 5 out of 10 points, so quite low. And it's also good at low speeds, and I'm talking about the Yamaha Tenere 700 on the 9th position in the rank. Around 70 to 80 km per hour, it hits its maximum and it just gives up. Getting into a corner and, God forbid, trying to change directions quickly is not fun. The struggle is not as dramatic as in the V-Strom, but it's a struggle, and I do not really enjoy that. For high-speed cornering, it's also not a good bike, and I do not enjoy nor feel entirely in control over it at these speeds. Moving on with 6 out of 10 points, so a bit better, almost acceptable, is a KTM 890 Adventure R. Perhaps stiff suspension helps it a bit, but here everything takes time. Thankfully, it requires less effort, but the struggle is there, and I believe that, again, the position on it, with your feet high and the handlebar low, makes every single thing harder than it should be, unnecessarily. I don't know why. The bike is composed, which is nice. It's also precise, and that's a plus, but it could be better, and maybe if you install a taller handlebar. Hopefully. Not much to say, as now there are better contenders to mention in this area, like the number 7 with also 7 out of 10 points for Ducati Desert X. So as you see, significantly better than 5 points for low speed handling before. Quite the opposite to what happened to the V-Strom 800E and to the Tenere. This X also needs time to change directions at high speeds, but alright, it is also a tall bike with a large front wheel. It's also under control then, which is good, and it places it on the safer side. There are no big issues here. 6th place and 7 points out of 10 go to Triumph Tiger 900 GT Pro, which corners well at high speeds and is very stable doing so. It's well under control at high speeds. It feels competent, but not exciting, as it also takes time for it to follow any changes in the direction that you implement. I say it's doing well. Similarly well with 7 out of 10 points, but the position above it is BMW F900 GS. It's just a tiny bit quicker to react at high speeds, but everything else is similar to Triumph and at a good level overall. Now with 1 more point, so 8 out of 10, and so doing very good, at the 4th place is Honda XL750 Transalp. This bike seems to be doing the same as Triumph and BMW, just a bit better. So more eager to turn at high speeds, a bit better control in a turn, and just a little more impressive and enjoyable. I place it higher than these two, and this would be the first in the rank to actually bring real joy when it comes to high-speed handling to me. But number 3 feels even more fun because of one reason. It's also got 8 out of 10 points, but it's more fun. This is because you've got a rumbling power plant ready to shoot you forward at any time, regardless of a curve you're at. So not only does it corner really well, but it may also let you gain speed much quicker than Transalp, for example. And I'm talking about KTM 890 Adventure. Its engine lets you play with the speeds better, and so you may use its high-speed cornering advantages more. If we would take it out of the equation, 890 Adventure and Transalp would be going perfectly head-to-head. But we shouldn't, as you buy the whole package, and this KTM may be more fun here overall. Still, if you're not convinced, there is one more bike that gets 8 out of 10 points and stands in front of the KTM. It's the new, for 2025, Ducati Multistrada V2S. It's always nimble, and it is always under great control regardless of speed. It's also very quick to change directions, and I feel that it's superior in this area to KTM and Honda. Again, it is not a colossal difference, but if you would ask me, I would say that I prefer how Multistrada is doing it. There are also no issues at all at high speeds, and the front suspension that's almost always staying flat, which only helps it. Very good motorcycle in terms of handling, both at low and high speeds as you see, but the king of handling is only one here. And with 9 this time out of 10 points on the first place comes Aprilia Touareg 660. Even though you won't reach those super high speeds as quickly and as easily as on the other bikes due to the crappy engine, once you gain some speed you will see that still, for this brief moment, that you will be able to experience it. It will do great also here. Touareg handles with no effort, it encourages you to change directions, even just for fun. It stays in a lane however you want it to, and it lets you change your mind at any time with full compliance. It's the most cooperative of them all in my opinion. Timed for the green and red in terms of being above or below average. Now in the 5th category, that is likely the last large and possibly key for some of you, we've got seat and position comfort. This may at the same time be a more tricky one, as we all are built differently. I'm 1.83 meters tall or 6 feet tall, and I like a motorcycle seat to be rather softer than harder, but wide enough that it doesn't hurt any of my particular areas. Also, it shouldn't be ending sadly in the front, but preferably gently overlap the fuel tank just in case. You know, the seat is softer than the tank. But one issue may also be there if the shape makes you constantly slide forward and collide with that tank. These are the key mistakes in terms of seating for me. The other thing is foot pegs, that if mounted too high, it will simply be uncomfortable due to not relaxing knee angle, so the lower the pegs, the better. Generally, handlebar position will be very individual and there's no one position fits all. Some of you prefer to slightly lean forward, some don't, and some will prefer the bars to be closer. I think I like them somewhere in the middle, but what I like the most is sitting on a $50 million chair, which I basically am right now, as this is the seat coming from the top BMW limousine of 7 Series that's fully electrically adjustable. Everything here can be moved with a flick of a switch. They are moved down there. Even the side bolsters, knee extensions and shape angles of the backrest to make the chair suit you individually. I've got 2 of these, one in beige and one in black, and I'm loving them. Highly recommended, knowing all these Chinese and supermarket products out there that hurt your backs and posture. Do check them out at powerseats.eu. You may even get yourself one straight out of a Rolls-Royce Phantom, the new one, if it's still available at this time that you're watching this video. But let's get to the ones in our mid-size adventure bikes that are not electrically adjustable, but some of them are adjustable in terms of height. The worst to me is KTM 890 Adventure R, for the reasons that I mentioned a few times before, as they impact other areas of the bike negatively too. It is foot pegs mounted high and the handlebar being low, which makes you feel like you're crouching, and instead of cooperating with the handlebar, it's just there for you to not separate from the bike. These are my impressions. KTM gets 4 out of 10, and its super tall seat at 88 centimeters lets you slide too much for my liking, and it's narrow, so the worst combination possible in my opinion. The bike requires you to have long legs to not fall with the bike, but once you put these long narrow legs on the pegs, you've got your knees by your head. Not comfortable and takes away plenty of control. Go away. Next is Yamaha Tenere 700 with 5 out of 10 points and a seat at 87.5 centimeters, which is also very tall obviously. The seat is also narrow and also hard, so again some butt trouble may be coming. However, the foot pegs are mounted lower, so there's no trouble here, and the knee angle is also okay. Handlebar is on the other hand again too low, like in a KTM. Now mind you that standing on the pegs with a super low handlebar is challenging for your legs or your back, or both. Weird, if you ask me. Not very good score for Tenere here. On the 8th place with 6 out of 10 points comes Ducati Desert X, which clearly is so full of extremes. It's like an elephant in ballerina's shoes. It's got a tall seat at 87.5 centimeters like in the Tenere, but somehow it feels like harder to deal with for me in terms of height. None of the bikes mentioned so far has an adequate seat, which is a pity. Neither does Desert X. Interestingly enough, the seat is fairly comfortable for me as it's not too hard. But it's hard to grab the bike with your knees, while the foot pegs should be lower. Right now, the handlebar is rather high, but I would still move it up, as right now I feel like I need to lean forward too much, as I notice that in my wrists after a ride or even during a ride. Overall, it's not the best for me, and I somehow feel out of place on it due to those few small issues. 7th place with 7 points goes to Aprilia 2RX 660 with its seat at 86 centimeters from the ground. And boy, is this seat hard and narrow. It's got a point that may crush your balls, which obviously isn't perfect if you're still having some serious life plans. On the other hand, the handlebar, despite being quite wide, is located higher than the other bikes, and that's giving you pretty neutral position on the bike that I do like. Foot pegs could be lower, but it's not bad, and in general it's fine in all areas except for the seat itself, which is actually the easiest element to replace with something aftermarket or to modify at some shop. 6th spot with also good 7 points out of 10 goes to Honda Transalp, that has a nice plush and soft seat, even too soft, as I was surprised to mention in my full review of this bike at that time. Now, too soft meaning that you sag into it and it may start squeezing your bum a little too much. Never thought that a motorcycle seat may be too soft, but this one may. Still, it's comfy, at least for some time. Its height is 85 centimeters, so more approachable than others so far. It's all fine with the handlebar, just perhaps on the other hand, slightly too close. But the height seems fine. That's it. No big red flags in the Transalp. But Ducati Multistrada V2S on the 5th position, also with 7 points out of 10, does it better. It's the first bike that has its seat adjustable here. You may choose 85 or 83 centimeters, which is very low, if you like that. The knee angle on this bike is really relaxed, which is a big plus, while the handlebar positioning is too sporty for me on the other hand. The opposite to Transalp, where it's too close. But the seat feels like it's a compromise between soft and hard, but in a way that I suspect may suit fans of having it both ways. Nice. BMW F900 GS, also with 7 out of 10 points, lands just before it. Its seat may seem harder, but the shape makes it fine in a second. Raised wide handlebar of the Enduro Pro Pack is fine. It just requires you to lean forward a bit like in a Ducati in order to reach it. This may be challenging to some when making tight turns and tight spots. The seat is at 87 centimeters and is not adjustable, while the foot pegs are located in a great spot, making the knee angle really fine. 87 centimeters of seat height in this BMW is just a little bit too much for me. Now, despite some disadvantages compared to the Multistrada, I somehow feel more in control just being on this bike. Cannot tell you why, but it's enough to place it just before the Multistrada. Again, remember that this is quite subjective and applies to my own body, which none of you obviously has, even despite y'all wanting it badly, I know that. Let's move 1 point up to 8 out of 10 and Triumph Tiger 900 GT Pro on the 3rd place. This is a 2025 model and on with a revised seat. Not sure what it's done and if it's better or worse, but Triumph seems to be doing it always well in terms of comfort. Here as well, as the seat is wide, supportive, adjustable between 82 and 84 centimeters, my lower body is very comfortable on it. You sit very nicely upright, and the only thing that I would change is the height of the handlebar, which I would prefer installed a bit higher. Other than this, it is a very comfortable bike to be on. On the 2nd spot, also with 8 out of 10 points, is KTM 890 Adventure, and this is confusing as I wonder what's so different to the R variant except for the seat position that this bike feels to me like being one of the best, but the R is way below average. Not sure. But here in the Adventure, the seat is really nice and wide. It is mounted either at 84 or 86 centimeters, which are both having their advantages. The handlebar is not too wide and it's easy to grab comfortably, also at the right level. And the foot pegs seem to be in just the right place, so not too high. Not sure how that works. This is weird, keeping in mind my issues with the R variant. Here in the Adventure, it all seems just fine to me, even though it's a lower bike overall. I wonder if you guys have similar observations. Anyhow, this is my number 2 right now. And the number 1, also with 8 out of 10 points, so not large differences between these best bikes, is Suzuki V-Strom 800E. It wins to me thanks to its seat that I consider to be one of the most comfortable ones, if not the best one for me. It's mounted at 85.5 centimeters and isn't adjustable, it is wide enough and it has a fitting shape. Maybe it's because for 10 years I've been riding a V-Strom 1000 and my body just adapted to Suzuki. The handlebar is a bit too far from me while being just a bit too wide at the same time, but the foot pegs and the knee angle are very good. Nothing is perfect, but the V-Strom is a winner with the KTM 890 Adventure and Tiger 900 GT Pro being right next to it. And here is your green and red indicators of which ones are from the pack of better choices and which from the worst choices in this particular area. Sixth category is wind protection, and a disclaimer here is that Honda Translab that I got for testing was equipped with an accessory taller windscreen, getting an let's call it an advantage over all other motorcycles. I'm going to include it anyways, just with this disclaimer. In here, what matters to me is first of all the lack of turbulences that shake your head and make it hard to enjoy a faster ride, a possibly best wind protection overall so that no wind stream is hitting your body. That would be the second thing. Hard to achieve in general, but some bikes here actually manage that. And lastly, the adjustment of the windshield. If it's there and how it works, as it may be very useful. Starting from the last, we're having Yamaha Tenere 700 with 3 points out of 10. What it means is that it's scoring badly, and this is because there's plenty of buffeting, turbulences. Again, I'm 183 centimeters tall, or 6 feet tall. Tenere has no adjustment, and in the end I would conclude that it would be better off with no windshield than whatever that thing there is. It hardly gets worse than that in my opinion. The one position higher in the 9th place, but with the same low score, is BMW F900 GS, with also simply bad wind protection, especially over 100 km per hour, and not much better at lower speeds. It also doesn't have an adjustable screen, which is ridiculous. What the hell? Now, jumping 1 point up to 4 out of 10 points, and the 8th position, there is the sneaky Triumph Tiger 900 GT Pro, which does have adjustment of the height of its windshield, but it also has that lovely little hole cut in its shield. I'm not 100% sure, but whatever there is on any Triumph Tiger, including the 1200, I notice a lot of wind stream coming into my helmet from the bottom of it, and so I conclude that it's because of that bloody hole. Yeah, just cut the whole thing away and see what it does. Well, let's cut the whole windscreen, but no, the Triumph has cut a hole, and now I'm getting bugs and dirt in my eyes all the time, and moving the shield up or down doesn't really fix it. It is a real problem, and it should be perhaps even below the Yamaha and BMW, but once, well, there is no turbulences, that's very significant, but once you replace the windshield, you will actually still have useful height adjustment system, so the potential there is higher. Better, but only slightly, is Ducati Desert X with 4 points out of 10, and on the 7th position, this is a badass bike, you know? It's like Hulk Hogan, and instead of cutting through the air, making its life easier for itself and yourself, it smashes into it, creating a lot of loud sound effects around you and making the experience far from even good. No adjustment is a pity. Overall, it's not good on this bike. 6th position with 5 out of 10 points in this category is Suzuki V-Strom 800D, above around 80 km per hour. The protection is not very helpful. Below that, there isn't much turbulences, but it's also loud in a way that the airstream is managed around your helmet. The windshield may be adjusted, but you need to stop, get the tools, mount it differently, and then see. Stupid, but better than nothing. Suzuki has always had issues with the wind, somehow. Next one, so far it's bad and annoying. 5th position with just as many points as Suzuki, so 5 out of 10, is a surprise of the day. Ducati Multistrada V2S. So the newest out of the bunch, one of the most technologically advanced and overall impressive motorcycle, with also the best windshield adjustment system. You just grab and move the screen by this lever and it's done in a second. It's brilliant. So why in the world have they followed Triumph, literally their worst ones, and cut a hole in the bloody shield? To save weight? To watch the road through it once the shield gets dirty? There's plenty of turbulences and stuff in your eyes. If you lift the visor accidentally at speed, it's all hitting you there. This needs to be replaced. And then you're lucky to have great adjustment available. Yes, I admit that. I wonder if they do it on purpose to earn on selling you another screen. Now, come on, give me something. Alright, Aprilia Touareg comes to save us with 6 out of 10 points, as at least it doesn't do any significant harm. It's the first bike that seems to benefit from the windshield rather than suffering from it. At least it's allowing a smooth flow of air without turbulences or loud noises around your head. The thing doesn't protect you much and is there more for the looks, but at least it's not making things worse. Forget about any adjustment, they are in different Italy than Ducati and they just couldn't go and see how those other Italians do it in Ducati factory. No, at least we know they don't steal technology from each other, fuckers. And finally, there's a bike that does this well, and it's KTM 890 Adventure R with 7 out of 10 points, so quite good actually. This is because its system provides you with an amazingly clean stream of wind. Your head isn't perfectly protected, but it's all really good except for the lack of any sort of adjustment. For a long trip or any fast ride, it's fine, so thank you KTM. Similar and even a bit better, on the second spot is KTM 890 Adventure without the R, which has a fairly tall windshield that actually protects you very well. There aren't any turbulences, there are no loud noises, and there is good protection. You should appreciate it. You should. Unless you ride around town on a warm day on this bike, which is frying your legs with any opportunity and a hot engine already, then this great protection means that there is not much airflow around you and you simply cook quicker because KTM decided that installing any sort of adjustment of this tall windscreen would just let you cool yourself down while you should, in their opinion. So that's that. Moving on to the cheating champion with potentially 8 out of 10 points here, Honda Transalp, with an accessory Honda's taller windscreen that I couldn't replace for a stock one on the test bike. Now, leaving this fact of cheating by Honda aside, this is the best windscreen and wind protection out of the bunch. No turbulences, no issues, and not a big of a deal with the lack of adjustment, just like in a KTM actually, as Honda isn't getting that terribly hot, so you're not in so much trouble. But I believe that some adjustment should be there, and mind you, this is a pre-facelifted Transalp. Maybe for the better, as in 2025 and on, a model I see that lovely hole, like in Triumphs and Multistrada, that makes stuff fly into your helmet from the bottom. I'll pretend I haven't seen that and let Honda double cheat and win this one. But you guys better test ride it in case there is some issue. In green, you get lucky, but not perfect, above the average contenders, and in red, the suicidal machines. It's time for brakes, where I'll try to go quickly through because who cares about braking? 3 main things for me are the strength, how easy to use and dose the brakes are, so if you are able to control them and how quickly and how much you're willing to brake at a given time, and finally if you can even use the rear brake due to its position to the position of its lever relatively to a foot peg. In some bikes the rear brake lever is higher or at the same level as foot pegs, and often you need to lift the whole foot off the foot peg in order to use it, which is ridiculous. So let's dive into it and let me tell you which bike is where. The last spot with just 4 out of 10 points goes to Triumph Tiger 900 GT Pro, even though the brakes are strong enough overall. In the front brake, initially nothing happens when you try to brake, when you pull the lever, and then suddenly it behaves as if it wanted to lock it, and it sends your head flying forward, so dosing is terrible, especially at lower speeds. Suspension dives a lot and you lose a lot of control over the bike and confidence on it because of that. The rear brake doesn't do much as ABS engage very quickly and there is not much power left. Bad calibration that should be fixed by Triumph. Better does Aprilia Touareg with 5 out of 10 points, as the main issue here is not dosing, but the fact that you have to squeeze the front brake really hard if you wanted to do something more significant for you. The rear brake is fine on the other hand, but generally it could also be better. Now, also with 5 points out of 10 comes Yamaha Tenere 700 that does a very similar thing to the Triumph because of a nervous front brake initially. The rear brake is hard to use, accessing the lever, and this is the case of you having to lift your whole leg in order to use it. Thankfully, everything is fine with the strength, but it's not a good execution overall if you ask me. The next one is also having similar issues. It's Ducati Multistrada V2S that's also getting only 5 points because its front brake is constantly in a panic. And you cannot stop normally without lifting your butt off the bike as the front brake engages so suddenly. I wonder how well it competes with Triumph for the most exaggerating reactions. Thankfully, the rear brake is fine and it's possible to access it normally. The strength is there, and at high speeds you will appreciate the brakes. Hence the position on top of the rest so far, but overall it's an issue. Then we jump up by 2 points to already 7 out of 10 for someone who can pull this trick off pretty fine, and Suzuki V-Strom 800E in the 6th place. Everything here is alright in terms of dosing and access, and only the strength of the front brake is a bit questionable to me. You've got to squeeze it hard in order to get what you want, and I feel I would much rather squeeze it hard if I want the brake to work hard rather than squeeze gently and getting it hard anyway. However this sounds. Stop it. What I'm trying to say is that the bike makes you be more in control. Stop it. Moving up the ladder to the 5th place, and also with 7 out of 10 points for KTM 890 Adventure with the R letter, which has a totally good front brake with adequate power and dosing capabilities. Nice. There is some suspension dive when using it, but it's understandable as it's a tall bike with long travel suspension. The issue here is with the rear brake, that in order for you to use, you have to lift your whole leg up again, and that's obviously stupid and missing the point of having a brake available quickly anyway. Thankfully, the rear brake isn't the most effective, thankfully, nicely said, so you wouldn't be eager to use it much anyway, so problem solved. I just wonder if this is the right way of looking at it. Also 7 out of 10 points go to KTM 890 Adventure version that may only be feeling better in a way of your control of the bike by the way you're sitting on it and having more control over everything that's going on, including braking. Otherwise, it's the same story as with the R. A bit better does Ducati Desert X with 7 out of 10 points as well. All is fine here with a strong and sharp front brake that's well calibrated. Rear one is fine too. The only imperfect thing is the front suspension dive when using the front brake, but it's not terrible, hence the 3rd position in the rank. But there is a bike that does it better and gets 8 out of 10 points as it ticks all the boxes. And it's BMW F900 GS, which doesn't have any issues with strength, with dosing, and an access to the rear brake. It's all as it should be, so good job. My top bike here with still 8 out of 10 points is Honda Transall. It's got generally good brakes, just the front one needs to be squeezed a little harder to really bite well, and I wish it didn't need that much brutality of the right hand. Oh, come on guys, it's going the wrong way again. Well, it isn't perfect, that brake, because of that, and on top of it, the rear brake lever is also a little bit hard to use, but once you do, you will experience the best rear brake in the adventure motorcycling world. Check more on this in my full review of this bike, it's in the description. So all in all, BMW likely is the most complete package here, but the Transall's rear brake is so impressive that I would like to highlight it by putting it first. It is amazing. In green color, you've got the bikes that stop, and in red, ones that stop but you keep flying forward. Just kidding. The next category is fuel tanks capacity, and here I'll just unveil you the table with the data presenting the capacity from the smallest tank to the largest, and the more the better, because if you want to save weight, you just feel less, but if you want to extend the range, only having the place to put more fuel into is giving you that possibility. 4 bikes have the capacity of 20 liters, so they stay in the same good 2nd place. Note that Aprilia Touareg has a shitty fuel tank cap that you need to fully remove, and it's a huge pain to even open it, so there's the only bike with a certain disadvantage. They fixed that in Yamaha Tenere in comparison with the previous generation from the previous year. BMW F900 GS can have it all keyless on top of that, so it's the most convenient out of them in terms of the way those systems work. Now again, the average out of them all, and the ones in green are above the average and those in red are below the average. This way we've reached the category of weight, which I named the subjective feeling of weight, as it's not about the number in kilograms, pounds, or whatever whoever is using in the world, but about how these bikes actually feel. This is based on where their center of gravity is, how you're holding them by their handlebars, how balanced they are when setting off at very low speeds. This is what I call the feeling of weight. So let's get into it with the least cooperative contender in the 10th place with only 5 out of 10 points. This is KTM 890 Adventure R that's weighing around 215 to 220 kilograms weight, which is not that much, but it's a tall bike and moving it around is quite troublesome. Riding it slowly only makes you realize that, and overall it feels as the hardest to deal with. Next up with 6 out of 10 points, in the 9th place is Ducati Desert X, which not only looks quite heavy but feels that way too. In terms of numbers, you've got 223 kilograms of wet weight, so similarly to the KTM, just a bit more. And this is also a tall bike that contributes to feeling top heavy when dealing with it. Then, with a similar score and reasons for feeling heavier than others, is Yamaha Tenere 700, which is on paper lighter than the ones mentioned, since it weighs only 208 kilograms, which is in fact quite little. Impressive. But here you don't have much trouble with the weight when riding slowly, but when moving it around and riding fast, it feels like a few times heavier than it really is. Not the easiest one to work your way around. Better is Suzuki V-Strom 800DE with 7 out of 10 points, so already not bad. Its claimed weight is 222 kilograms, and actually it doesn't feel like much trouble in terms of weight. This is somewhere around the middle of the bunch. Others feel lighter than they appear on the other hand, and this is where Aprilia Touareg, that's getting 7 out of 10 points as well, is coming into play. 204 kilograms of wet weight is impressive, but the bike is tall along with its tall handlebar, mounted high which makes things harder when you're next to it trying to move it. But it's fine, no worries. 5th place with 7 points out of 10 goes to Triumph Tiger 900 GT Pro, which weighs 222 kilograms, so like the V-Strom and pretty much the same as Ducati Desert X, but I somehow feel like everything in this bike moves lighter, which is enhancing the feeling of it being lighter and easier to move around itself. It looks heavier than it is, and perhaps this has some influence on my assessment. 4th place, still with 7 out of 10 points, so marginal difference, is for BMW F900 GS. 219 kilograms wet, not much weight it feels to be around this bike, but once again, it's one of the bikes with the tallest seats, and I believe that this makes me perceive its weight as respectful. Yeah, one should say that it should be considered a pleasant bike to deal with in terms of weight. Now, there are better bikes in terms of feeling light as a feather, and the next one of these is KTM 890 Adventure that weighs around 215 kilograms wet, and it feels actually quite light. Not only riding, but pushing it around and even lifting, which is what I tried at some point, not from the ground, but it's definitely on the lighter side, and I appreciate that in it, as it makes it appear very much a fun bike because of that. Check more on this in my full review of it, linked in the description. 3rd place deserved, but Honda Transalp feels even lighter and gets 8 out of 10 points here for its 208 kilograms of wet weight that somehow disappear when dealing with the bike. It doesn't look as encouraging to come and lift it up as KTM, but it's really nicely manageable. Big compliment from me and its brother named Africa Twin 1100. It should learn, as it's exactly the opposite within this case. Now the 1st place and also 8 out of 10 points goes to Ducati Multistrada V2S. It is a heavier bike than the Transalp, weighing 220 kilograms wet, but somehow it feels ultra light, which I truly enjoy. It also gives an impression of being a fun bike worthy of this description. Only good things to say about those bikes in terms of how their weight is distributed. And now, green are the fit onions and red are the fat sausages. Technology is the next category, and here it's so many details that I wondered for a while how to do it, how to approach it, and in the end I'll just highlight why some bikes are below average and some above, along with some stuff that's standing out in the crowd. I'm getting into details in my full reviews and also in my head-to-head comparisons of all these bikes, so check them out if you want to know how exactly they compare with what features working how. Let's shoot forward, traditionally starting from the bottom, and Yamaha Tenere 700 with 5 out of 10 points. Well, who would expect that? It is a great time for this bike after the new generation was launched for 2025, as it got traction control, previously missing, big issue previously, not there being an issue anymore. It's not the best system, but it is there at least. There are 2 riding modes now, but both are bad. What else does it have that's cool or important? Rather standard things, but it's missing cruise control and keyless access, for example. No heated seats, I believe, either are on the list of optional equipment. The display is fine though. Simple and enough, but some solutions around it are stupid, so check them out in the full review. Next up is Honda Transalp, that has very similar features, just its traction control and riding modes are better than in the Yamaha. There is no cruise control or keyless ignition available. 5 out of 10 points, right next to Suzuki V-Strom 800DE with the same score. A position up, which also has no cruise control or keyless stuff, but it's got a 1-push start, which I like, and it works fine. It also feels somehow more technologically advanced. Aprilia Touareg 660 manages to get 1 more point, so 6 in total, as it's got cruise control. Then Ducati Desert X also gets 6 out of 10, as despite having a pretty deep menu, all the stuff on the display is so small that you just give up looking at it and browsing through the options after the first try anyway. That's a shame. Still, no keyless stuff and other potentially useful things that wouldn't be there on previous bikes. What KTM 890 Adventure R brings with 6 points out of 10 is a fantastic display, and it beats the X in this area. Its brother without the letter R in the end lands on the 4th place with the same score of 6 out of 10, but this bike has an adjustable seat height, so it's technologically more advanced in my eyes, despite this having nothing to do with software technology, understood this way. Anyway, but it's more convenient overall in my eyes, hence the higher position if I were to justify it. Let's move further to a bike that surpasses the border and reaches 7 out of 10 points, which is Triumph Tiger 900 GT Pro, as it's now got a better display from the larger Tiger 1200. It's a laggy display, but it's nicer than the one before, which was simply scary to look at. This bike can have tire pressure monitoring, it can have backlit switches on the handlebar, and electrically adjustable rear suspension, which is a big technological thing in my opinion, and thanks Triumph for that. Then comes Ducati Multistrada V2S, and note that the V2 with the letter S is a better equipped version of the V2, while no one buys the regular V2, and I feel it's pointless to do so. So let's stick to the V2S, as it's got electrically adjustable suspension, both in the front and in the rear, so better than the Triumph. And the customization and the menus are much, in my opinion, superior, so it gets 8 out of 10 points. But the winner here takes it all, which is BMW F900 GS with also 8 out of 10 points, as it introduces the keyless stuff that I'm always mentioning. Wow! There is both keyless ignition and a keyless fuel cap, but it's missing the electric suspension in the front and in the rear, like in the Multistrada, and even in the rear, which Triumph does have. And it also doesn't have backlit switches, so why would I give it a higher score? Because I value the keyless stuff so much more, as you use it every single time you approach the bike. Also, Tiger and Multistrada have adjustable windshields and BMW doesn't, so it sort of balances it out, while BMW then wins thanks to a better display. And here we go. Not that I'm promoting the BMW, but seriously, it just looks also as a more advanced technologically product overall, and you might be able to feel that. Here are the ones above the average, and here in red ones below the segment's average. In terms of engine sound, which to some people like myself may actually be important, in this segment there aren't huge differences, as most bikes have inline 2-cylinder engines, but well, there are some that sound better in my opinion. The weakest in this area, and at the same time perhaps the quietest with 5 points out of 10, is Suzuki V-Strom 800D. And yeah, being so quiet and with not much character in terms of sound is the main decision-making factor that brings the Suzuki to the bottom of the table, to the 9th place. Next up is Triumph Tiger 900 GT Pro with 6 out of 10 points, and this bike has an unusual engine with 3 cylinders in line. Because of this, it may sound a bit smoother and more like a typical sports bike with a 4-cylinder engine. Not there yet, it's somewhere in between. I'm not a huge fan of that, but I enjoy it more because it's something different than in the V-Strom. Still, not much character. Now, slightly better sound is generated by Aprilia Touareg with 6 out of 10 points in this area, but really not much of an improvement, as the sound experiences are nothing special here at all, especially when the engine fights for its life during hard acceleration and tough work by its 2 cylinders that are placed in a line. Before Touareg, I now place Yamaha Tenere 700, and this is a low position with just 6 points for 2025 model year and on. That's because this bike used to have a fantastic deep growl at all times that I loved before. Now they made it more civilized with a refresh for this model year, and it lost most of its wild character, and that's a huge pity. Now only when you rev it, it sounds really good, but I'm so truly disappointed that when riding and opening the throttle wide open, it's now quite lame and just screams like most others. Not a good move, Yamaha. A bit nicer is Ducati Desert X that I've given also 6 out of 10 points, while this bike is having a V2 engine instead of an inline 2, which gives it an advantage in my eyes and in my ears. I love V2 sound, and Ducati have done something to this bike that made it not sound like a typical brutal V2. It is muted and somehow disappointing for a V2. Add to that some clanking noise in the engine, and the audio experiences aren't really there as much as they could be even with a stock exhaust. Better are doing the KTMs that I placed both on the 4th place with 7 out of 10 points. Their inline 2-cylinder engines sound smooth, but they are not as quiet as some others, which gives them a better position and us a nicer vocal experience. The sound still isn't super enjoyable, but at least you realize that you're riding a fairly powerful motorcycle. And it doesn't scream like a lady at higher RPM. In the 3rd place, and with a nice 8 points out of 10 and a really nice deep and a surprising sound of a V2 engine, is the Ducati Multistrada V2S. And wow, this bike already at idle sounds as if it had an aftermarket exhaust. It isn't getting too loud at all, but it definitely draws attention. It sounds better than V4 Ducatis. More manly, stronger and louder at idle. At higher revs, it gets less violent, which sounds like making a lot of sense, as it won't disturb you at high speeds. Very nice, and this is how it should be. I'm liking it a lot. I still placed BMW F900 GS in front of it, but with the same score of 8 points out of 10. This BMW does keep its aggression, especially in the dynamic mode, regardless of the RPM level. So if you push the bike, you're getting more of that good stuff. And when you rev it, it pops and cracks, which is super cool and fits this bike perfectly, I think. Having such a great sounding system now in this new model, the entire perception of the performance of this bike may be significantly enhanced. And this is a very good job done by BMW. It's not intrusive or too loud, but it's got character. A lot of it. And it's awesome. But wait. It says Akrapovic on the muffler, doesn't it? Yes, it is a factory-fitted, almost like an aftermarket exhaust. Is this cheating? I don't think so, as it comes this way from the factory and it is road legal, so all is fine. And remember that there is all this fuss about emission standards and so on. Good move by BMW. To me, it changes a lot in terms of being excited about a motorcycle. But to be fair, there is one machine also with 8 out of 10 points that's even more impressive, and it's got a standard, fully stock exhaust. The first place goes to Honda XL750 Transat. It just sounds big and powerful and under load, so at not the highest RPM, when you open the throttle wide open, it responds with a deep rumble like a big V8 car engine. Wow, Honda knows how to make good sounding system. And it's actually Yamaha that's having a speakers division. I myself have these lovely Yamaha studio monitors, so speakers in other words, and they're fantastic. When it comes to engines, Honda for the win. Green are the good speakers, and in the red you see the drunkards singing. Switching to my very own and therefore subjective perception of the design, so I'm going to be brief, as you all can see the bikes and make your mind easily yourselves. But let's give a hint to the manufacturers' design teams and let them think what I think. Seeing all these in person may be worth it. Worst to me is Suzuki V-Strom 800D, which I'm giving only 3 out of 10 points for its questionable beauty, and especially that front light that's killing the whole bike. The proportions are not saving it, and I don't see a way of easily fixing its styling. Almost equally ugly is the Baba Yaga, with its ugly nose, getting also 3 out of 10 points. This is a KTM 890 Adventure R with that enduro front fender that none of the KTM riders can live without, so obviously it's so necessary in this bike. Alright, 4 out of 10 points for its prettier brother without that nose. Not much better, yeah, maybe it's not changing so much. KTM 890 Adventure doesn't look as powerful and as exciting as it actually is to ride, which is a missed opportunity, I think. Alright, with the next bike, I've got a problem because it's not bad looking, but it's such a missed opportunity, is it's a very good bike that just looks like nothing. A bit of nothing is here in front of you. Pay us millions for it. Nah, I'm not convinced. And you get the Triumph Tiger 900 GT Pro. 4 points out of 10 from me, as it just gets me mad. Place number 6 with 5 points out of 10 goes to Aprilia Touareg, as it looks old, it looks strange, and it looks Chinese, and I'm allowed to say that. So not very high quality, let me put it this way. That front light area is just weird. It doesn't look like a proper Italian bike to me, whatever that would mean. With the place number 5, we move out of the area of ugliness and arrive at the okay spot. And this is where Honda Transalp greets us, and we give it 7 out of 10 points in exchange for that. I'm not sure if it looks better or worse after the update in 2025. Looks like this, take a look. I'm really not sure, but it's all right, and it looks like a proper motorcycle, not some toy, or ugly toy at least. Also 7 points out of 10, and 4th place for Yamaha Thunder 700, which looks cool with that front 4 LED light and a rally style. Very nice, I like it, and people on the sidewalks like it too. This may be the Tenner's biggest advantage in this adventure motorcycles community of 10 bikes. Then there is the beauty with great proportions and fine details that lacks some visible quality, but that's alright, as it can be read. So Ducati Multistrada V2S with 8 points out of 10, and the 3rd place in the rank. Right in front of it rides Ducati Desert X, also with 8 points for its cool retro modern design, which I like for some reason. It does look very badass. Strange tail lamp, but let's overlook that detail. This is a statement that may look better than it rides in terms of some areas, some characteristics. Quite an expensive furniture, but that's alright. Number 1 for me with 9 out of 10 points is BMW F900 GS. That's looking good. That's having good proportions, it looks badass to me, both modern and a rally style, which suits me well. It's having a distinctive design, and it is quite unique, I think. Now, I'm not sure showing averages makes any sense, but let's stick to the data, and again, my very own assessment and visual preferences. Here you have them. And let's move on to ground clearance, which may be a good indication of how strongly dedicated to off-road riding these motorcycles are and how far you may get on them. As always, I'm not going to assess them in terms of off-road riding, as I feel it simply may not be possible. I used to ride off-road as a kid and as a teenager. I took a few larger and mid-size adventure bikes to some sandy trails, but in order to test them properly, you would have to create an equal environment, set some specific criteria that likely couldn't or wouldn't be clear, and assess them how exactly. Measure traction when accelerating, how much contact with the ground the wheels have at certain speed to verify how good the suspension is working off-road and on the big bumps. I really doubt that this would make much sense. I believe that the feeling of weight, that low-speed handling, along with the bike's balance, are more important aspects, or likely the most important aspects, also for off-road riding, where the feeling of control is the key. And this I may assess, and I do, on the pavement much better and also safer. So here, I'm going to use ground clearance, as everything else out of these has been said already. I do take some of these for gentle bumpy trails, but on its own it tells me not much. And all of them go through that. Suzuki Hayabusa or BMW RT would manage it too. So it tells us not very much. Take a look at the table with the ground clearance measured in centimeters, where there was any reliable data to be collected. Here you have it. KTM 890 Adventure R is first with the largest ground clearance, and Ducati Multistrada V2S is the last, unless what I found about the Tiger 900 GT Pro and its 18 alleged centimeters is correct, because then it would be the last. You may also take into account suspension travel, which I mentioned in the suspension category, and this is data that is always accessible and it actually matters. Now, one before the last category is price and value for money. This is based on my country's market and general prices of the bikes in their basic variants, with no optional equipment, because then I would have to equip the bike either to some point that makes sense the most to me, or I would have to try to make them be equipped with exactly same equipment, which may not be possible. So this way that I've done it with the base versions, it's telling us for what lowest price you may get yourself one. This would mean taking BMW without the Enduro Pack Pro that this bike is actually with, but I'm taking prices on the other hand for Ducati Multistrada V2S, not the V2. It's a sort of a whole different variant, like a different motorcycle. That's too much to be said, but let's put it this way. And also for Triumph Tiger GT Pro instead of just the GT, as these are listed as separate motorcycles by Triumph. Similar story to Ducati. These are also the most popular ones. It doesn't make sense to get the lower ones. It all makes the most sense to me since the pricing strategies differ country to country and wouldn't be reliable data anyhow. I do it this way. I set the most attractive bike's price as a benchmark. I'll tell you how much more expensive the rest is in percentage and what value for money scores I'm giving them, knowing what these bikes represent. The worst value for money bike with 4 out of 10 points is, in my opinion, KTM 890 Adventure R, which is 61% more expensive than the benchmark. In the 9th place with also 4 out of 10 points and 67% higher price than the benchmark is Ducati Desert X. The same score of 4 points, and the 8th place with 78% higher price than the cheapest bike is Ducati Multistrada V2S, that I feel still gives us better value than the Desert X, but it's almost double the price of one of these bikes. Meanwhile, the 7th position with 4 points too goes to Triumph Tiger 900 GT Pro, which is 59% more expensive than the cheapest bike. Next is Yamaha Tenere 700 with 5 out of 10 points and just 3% higher price in the 6th spot. 5th goes to Aprilia Touareg along with 6 out of 10 points. It is 5% more expensive than the benchmark bike. 6 points and 4th position are for KTM 890 Adventure, which is a fairly cool bike, but it costs 51% more than the cheapest one. So I would still say that it's a questionable place to be in. But now the 3rd spot marks making sense to me, and this bike is 33% more expensive. It gets from me 7 points out of 10. I would really consider it value-wise. It's BMW F900 GS. A place before it with just a 9% higher price than the benchmark, also 7 points out of 10 from me, is Suzuki V-Strom 800DE. This looks like good value for money considering what it's bringing to the table, except for design. And here you've got 2 in 1. Best value for money bike now in the 1st place, and at the same time priced the lowest. Actually, it's a coincidence. Honda XL750 Transalp with 8 points out of 10 from me. How is it actually so competent and for such a good price is beyond me, but this should be a bestseller. I don't have the numbers, but I would suspect that in some places it might just as well be already. However, I don't see many of these on the streets. Now, we've been together through a lot, you guys and I. 14 categories analyzed. And if you're still here, I pay my respects, and I hope that it was, and it's gonna be worth it. Definitely, that was the plan, and I've put a lot of work and time into it. There's just one more category and a final summary, if I call it that. And that last category is quite deep and, well, let's say it personal. It is what I call the X factor. How cool the bike is, regardless of what in a given bike may be considered cool. What kind of emotions a bike generates in me when I think about it. Does it make me want to jump on it and just ride it? I would prefer to stay in a garage and maybe at some point I'll find a reason to ride it, or will have to get somewhere quickly through the city traffic. That's the idea behind this, again, very subjective category. Here, to me, the least attractive emotions-wise is Triumph Tiger 900 GT Pro, despite being a generally good bike in my eyes. It's just that isn't a thing that I find cool about it. Maybe the electrically adjustable rear suspension, but I wouldn't go down to the garage and fire it up and just change from the softest to the stiffest and back. No way, this only gets 5 out of 10 points and the last 10th position. Then with 6 points out of 10 and the 9th place is strange to say that, but Honda Transalp. It handles very well, it feels light, it even has a great sound, but somehow I cannot generate much excitement in myself thinking about it. The same score of 6 out of 10, but some more emotion creates in me KTM 890 Adventure R, simply because of its fiery engine that makes you feel like a badass, at least in the straight line and sitting so high off the ground in a position of power. Not much more there is to it, as I don't feel like very much willing to jump on it and just ride around. Definitely not my case here with this bike. That's the 8th position, while in the 7th we've got Suzuki V-Strom 800D that also gets 6 points. It's got that super cool handling between 20 and 80 km per hour, but that's about it when it comes to cool stuff. So there's something, it's just that I know that other bikes can excite you in more areas. 6th place, also with still 6 points, goes to Yamaha Tenere 700 and its awesome look and a name. I believe that there is a fine story behind the Tenere, just the reality doesn't, to me, really follow. So I do not exactly understand how Yamaha intends on following up on that legend and its promise. In the 5th place, we've got Aprilia Touareg 660, but still with just 6 points, because despite its absolutely fantastic and the best handling in the segment, in my opinion, some other important areas are simply bad, and this drags the bike down. Thinking about handling, I'm very excited. Thinking about all the rest, I'm already 10 kilometers further looking to ride something else. Nope. Then there's the next bike, one position up from it, but also with 6 points out of 10, as it does something good, but many other of its functions aren't delivered so well. It's Ducati Desert X, which looks really cool and has a very comfortable suspension. It is rather quick, but it's not so much fun. Also for a ridiculous price, so your expectations may be high. Then we've got a step up with 7 points out of 10, and a bike that I would finally like to jump on and have a ride just like that. And I wouldn't be annoyed or bored by the ride, but at the same time, it's not mind-blowing for me. Many things are done very well, but since it's Ducati Multistrada V2S, I feel that there isn't enough character and personality in this bike somehow. It's pretty to look at. It is quick, it is comfortable, it is fancy, and it is handling well, which is great, but I would not feel extremely cool on it, nor such incredibly excited about the next ride. Moving on, in the 2nd place, there is a bike that does excite me, and I would pretty much always be excited to ride it, to feel the acceleration, to cooperate with it in the corners, listen to the sound and brake aggressively after quickly gaining speed. It's BMW F900 GS. And if you in any way think about the previous model, being the F850 GS, absolutely forget about that. The new F900 GS is actually exciting and encouraging to me. I am just not a fan of that stiff suspension. I'm giving it 8 out of 10 points here. Just as I am to the number 1 in this category because it's so addictive. It's doing almost everything well, with just one terrible issue that depends on where you live, as KTM 890 Adventure may cook you alive if you ride too slow, or if you stop, or if you enjoy the hell out of the great performance of this bike and then slow down. It makes me want to dress up and go get it and just ride for the fun of riding and enjoying the experiences on this machine. It is a proper fun bike in my eyes. So now that we're through with all the categories, with all the scores and ratings, I'll just sum it up. Firstly, I promised you to rank the bikes according to their places in all categories. Just please remember that the number of areas a bike does well in may not mean anything, as they may just as well be the categories that you simply don't care about much. So it's key to focus on how well a given machine, a given bike does where you care. Individually, every single one of you guys. Still, we may get a certain idea of how competent an adventure bike is based on how good of an all-rounder it is. So here you have it. The last place with the lowest total score goes to Yamaha Tenere 700. Then we've got KTM 890 Adventure R. Next is Triumph Tiger 900 GT Pro. Better in my ranks is Suzuki V-Strom 800D and Aprilia Touareg 660 together, which somehow give the way to Ducati Desert X. But BMW have done it even better with their F900 GS, but it's gotta make space for Honda Transalp, which deserves all the good words about it, despite maybe not being that super crazy exciting. And now, Ducati Multistrada V2S. Nice new generation by Ducati. And my winner, based on the places in all categories of this huge comparison, is KTM 890 Adventure, which is a truly amazing bike, until it gets hot. However, then it's equally amazing, just so fantastic and extremely hot at the same time. Still, these are my very own observations and priorities taken under consideration. If you feel that reliability and maintenance should also be counted here, as some of you guys commented in my huge comparison of all large adventure bikes video that I've linked to in the description, then let me tell you that to really collect the data on reliability at the scale, we would have to conduct proper research like some organizations do with cars. But they don't really do that kind of tracking for motorcycles, so I'm afraid that the legends, that the ideas and experiences of those screaming the loudest on the internet will unfortunately have to live amongst us. Maintenance costs vary country to country and even dealer to dealer, so I suggest you consult this with your nearest dealer and simply ask them to calculate everything throughout the course of 5 to 10 years, and hopefully this way you will know everything, because they should be able to do that. This is at least doable. Now, one more information, as we should take a look at the averages, as this way the results may and actually are a little different, and they tell us a little bit of a different story on which bikes are the most consistent overall and end up above or below the average the most. I simply counted the ratio of above and below average and placed the bikes from being the most often below average in the segments to the most often being above, which gives us a pretty interesting set of data. This way here, the last place goes to, well, still Yamaha Thunder 700, that's above average only in 20% of instances, in 20% of categories, and in 80% of categories is below average. Then we've got an interesting situation, as 3 motorcycles scored the same and found themselves even in the 7th place together, with 33% of times being above and 67% of time being below the average. Here we've got KTM 890 Adventure R, then there's Triumph Tiger and Ducati Desert X. 6th place goes to Aprilia Touareg, as in 47% of categories it's above average and in 53 it's below. Now in the 5th place from the top, Suzuki V-Strom 800D, which means that it's fairly good in being above the average, with 53% being better than most and 47% of instances being below the average. It's better than the first rank was showing for this bike. Before Suzuki, here comes Honda Transalp in the 4th place. It's fairly consistent in being amongst the best, with 57% of times being there versus 43% being on the losing side of the table. Very much in the above the average bunch is BMW F900 GS in the 3rd place, with 60% of green categories and 40% of red ones. Now, very good in scoring very high is the bike placed in the 2nd position, with 73% of times being better than average and only 27% being amongst the worst ones, below the average. This is the new Ducati Multistrada V2S, which I also consider a quite complete motorcycle. Very good job, Ducati. Respect. In the 1st place, with 80% of instances where the bike is amongst the winners and only 20% amongst the losers, is KTM 890 Adventure. The one without the letter R in the end, and this is important, as you see, it's a big difference. In the large ADV bikes comparison, there were actually some significant shifts on the top when I moved to the rank of consistency of winning. So check it out if you're interested in big ones, as it's linked in the description. And so are also linked the individual full and honest reviews of all the motorcycles from this complete comparison. There are some more bikes as well, like Kawasaki versus 650, previous Triumph Tiger 900 Rally, previous Yamaha Thunder 700 and Ducati Multistrada V2S. Everyone should be able to find something useful for themselves. I'm glad I've made this really large comparison, and I wonder what you're thinking, guys. Let me know in the comments, and let's see what new models coming will be bringing to the segment. Now, all the best to you. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the comments and in the other videos. Bye.